Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Medal of Honor induction ceremony in honor of Sergeant First Class Alwyn C. Cashe, Sergeant First Class Christopher A. Celiz, and Master Sergeant Earl D. Plumlee. Sergeant First Class Cashe, Sergeant First Class Celiz, and Master Sergeant Plumlee were presented our nation's highest and most prestigious award for valor by the President of the United States, the Medal of Honor. This morning, they will be formally inducted into the Pentagon's most sacred place, the Hall of Heroes. Our official party for today's ceremony includes the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin, the Secretary of the Army, the Honorable Christine E. Wormuth, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark A. Milley, the Chief of Staff of the Army, General James C. McConville, and the Sergeant Major of the Army, Michael A. Grinston. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the singing of our national anthem by Sergeant First Class Benjamin Pattison and the invocation delivered by Chaplain Thomas Soljam.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we mark this prestigious occasion in a word of prayer. Be strong and courageous, you have commanded us, O Lord. Lord, you call warriors to be strong and very courageous, and you promise to go with them wherever their paths may lead when they answer the call to serve our nation and army. Thank you for giving us three strong and very courageous leaders and warriors, Master Sergeant Earl Plumlee, Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cashe, and Sergeant First Class Christopher Celiz. These non-commissioned officers, the backbone of our Army, displayed great courage in times of immense peril out of a commitment to duty and love for their fellow soldiers and teammates. Today, we add the names of these three warriors to the pantheon of those honored in the Hall of Heroes who have earned a grateful nation's highest award for acting with unwavering bravery in combat. We are grateful for their sacrificial service and for the family, friends, and comrades who help forge and support these warriors, who set the highest possible example for the rest of us to follow. May your blessings be on the families of these warriors. Continue to watch over our nation and army, and provide us with men and women of like compassion, character, and courage. Keep our nation's torch of freedom ablaze as a perpetual beacon of help and hope. God, in your matchless, mighty, and holy name I pray. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief of Staff of the Army.
Well, good morning, and it's a great day to be in the United States Army. Secretary Austin, Secretary Wormuth, General Milley and Holly Ann, General Hokanson, Mr. Lohman, Vice General Martin, CW5 Dixon Carter, Sergeant Major Grinston, fellow leaders, thank you all for being here today. And we are honored to have Master Sergeant Plumlee and his family here, his wife Terry, and the kids who are watching virtually. So that's very, very special. And also, we're honored to have the family of Sergeant First Class Cashe here, his wife Samarra, his daughter Alexis, and his sister Cashe and Celiz. Thank you all for being here. And also with Sergeant First Class Cashe and Celiz, his wife Katie, his daughter Shannon, and his mother Judy. And I know there's many other people here, many friends and fellow soldiers that have served with him. Welcome to all you, and welcome to all those who are watching online. You know, there's some people look for their heroes on golf courses. They look for them in theater halls, and they look for them at sports arenas. But my heroes are soldiers. Soldiers who have raised their right hand and said, "Send me." Soldiers like Alwyn Cashe. Soldiers like Cashe and Celiz. And soldiers like Earl Plumlee. Soldiers who have gone above and beyond the call of duty at the risk of their own lives to save their fellow soldiers, prevail in substantial enemy contact, and protect our nation. They are the best America has to offer, and they are the reason we are the world's greatest army, and they are the reason we have the privilege of living in the world's greatest nation. Today is a very special day in the Army because we honor and celebrate 3 extraordinary soldiers and induct them into our Hall of Heroes. It's a special place reserved only for those who have demonstrated extraordinary courage at the risk of their own lives. And I'm honored to have the opportunity to talk about 3 heroes, starting with Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cashe. Alwyn was the epitome of the Army non-commissioned officer, a professional and a leader with unwavering devotion to the welfare of his soldiers in accomplishing the mission at hand. Sergeant Cashe took care of his soldiers both on and off the battlefield. He knew them. He knew their families. And I believe that's why Sergeant First Class Cashe didn't hesitate to act in the face of enemy fire and danger. And on the 17th of October, when his platoon was attacked, he jumped out of his burning Bradley and immediately ran through withering fire to get his men. He never stopped, even when his own uniform, soaked in fuel, caught on fire. He was determined to save his men trapped in that burning Bradley, without regard to the enemy firing on them and without regard for his own life. His actions were to take care of his men first, and he never quit until all his soldiers were evacuated. It is fitting that Sergeant Cashe served in the same battalion of another hero and Medal of Honor recipient, Audie Murphy. And for over 75 years, American soldiers have stood on the shoulders of Audie Murphy. They will now stand on the shoulders of Alwyn Cashe as well. Our next honoree is Sergeant First Class Cashe and Celiz. He lived by the Ranger Creed to the very end, meeting his enemy on the field of battle, fighting with all his might, and never leaving a fallen comrade. Sergeant Celiz deployed to Afghanistan in 2018 as one of the most respected non-commissioned officers in a unit of our Army's most respected soldiers. On that fateful day, on the 12th of July, 2018, Sergeant Celiz's team came under heavy attack upon arriving at their objective. He repeatedly put himself in the direct line of enemy gunfire to protect his team. His bold decision allowed his team to maneuver to safety and into a position of advantage. Enemy contact intensified when medical evacuation aircraft arrived, and again, Cashe ran to block the aircraft and crew from enemy fire so they could load and evacuate their wounded. And as the aircraft started to take off, Cashe was hit by enemy gunfire. But he knew the risk to the crew if they stayed any longer, so he signaled for the aircraft to take off. He gave his life protecting others. While Sergeant First Class Celiz was receiving the Medal of Honor for his heroism he displayed on July 12th, Those who served with him in combat would say that heroism was there every single day. And I know that for a fact, because one of those soldiers is my son, who was a medevac pilot serving with Chris in Afghanistan. And he told me about Chris. He told me the many times that Chris put his life in jeopardy for his fellow soldiers and for those crews. And acts of bravery like this are heroic to us, were routine for Chris Celiz, and he inspires a whole generation of Rangers to live up to the legacy of the heroism that he has left us. And finally, we honor Master Sergeant Earl Plumlee, who was a decorated Marine and combat veteran with about 10 years of service. We decided to join the Army to become a Green Beret. The motto of our Special Forces is the oppresso liber, to free the oppressed. And that is what Master Sergeant Plumlee and his team were doing in Afghanistan. And that is what they did that day in Ghazni in August of 2013. FOB Ghazni was a small compound where our special operators and our troops were working alongside Polish allies and Afghan security forces. And on the 28th of August, 3 car bombs, followed by suicide bombers, tried to breach the perimeter in 3 different locations in a planned complex attack. One vehicle was taken out by snipers, the second by Afghan security forces, but the third blew a 60-foot hole in the wall of the FOB and was followed by a van of 10 suicide bombers. Earl and his teammates jumped into an unarmored pickup truck with a sniper rifle and pistol and raced to the sound of the explosions. Using that truck to shield 20 to 30 personnel sheltered in bunkers, Earl got out of that truck and began engaging suicide bombers at close range. He repeatedly put himself in the line of enemy fire to protect others. I was the commander of the 101st Airborne Division then, and the regional commander of Afghanistan East, which with Ghazni was. And I went to Ghazni to visit the forces after the attack. And that's where I first met Master Sergeant Plumlee. And what I saw there was extraordinary warriors who fought against overwhelming odds. They defeated an enemy that could have killed hundreds of soldiers and would have had strategic consequences for both the United States, our allies, and our partners. And every generation has its heroes, and today we add 3 more heroes to our Hall of Heroes from today's generation. And we will strive every single day to live up to their legacy. Their stories of valor live on through the lives of those they served with and through the lives that they saved. Their actions inspire us all and will continue to inspire future generations of America. They represent the best of America and the best of the Army. So please keep our Gold Star family members and all our soldiers serving in harm's ways in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you, and please join me in welcoming the Secretary of the Army, Christine Wormuth. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to so many distinguished guests, friends, and family. I would especially like to thank Secretary of Defense Austin and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Milley, for attending. General McConville, thank you so much for your moving words, and thanks to both you and Sergeant Major of the Army, Tony Grinston, for your decades of service leading great soldiers like the ones that we're honoring here today. To the past Medal of Honor recipients joining virtually, thank you for living as ambassadors for the Army, telling the stories of our soldiers and families and honoring their legacy through your continued service. Most importantly, thank you to our Medal of Honor recipients and their families for being here today. You inspire us all to live lives worthy of the sacrifices you've made. General McConville tells the stories of these heroes as a combat-tested leader himself. And he reminds us that valor is born out of moments when soldiers do extraordinary things to protect their battle buddies, embodying Army values like loyalty, duty, and personal courage. When I met and talked to members of the Cashe, Celiz, and Plumlee families, I was struck by the wealth of experiences that shaped each of the men and their families that we're honoring today. They represent diverse faiths, races, and upbringings that make our nation and our Army so strong. Sergeant First Class Cashe is the first African-American soldier to receive the Medal of Honor since Vietnam. Sergeant First Class Celiz is one of the few Jewish recipients of the Medal of Honor, and Master Sergeant Plumlee grew up on a cattle ranch waiting for the day he could join the military. But once in the Army, each soldier and family's journey followed a different path through some of our most prestigious units, the 3rd Infantry Division, the 75th Ranger Regiment, and the Green Berets of the 1st Special Forces Group. These 3 soldiers fought in 3 of our nation's wars with more than a dozen combat deployments shared between them. But woven through all of these differences, a common thread binds these men together, a shared love for their teammates and their families. Each of these men loved the soldiers they led. They embodied the Ranger and Special Forces creeds to never fail or leave a fallen comrade, and the NCO creed to keep the welfare of soldiers uppermost in their minds. Those who knew him say that Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cashe, our first inductee, knew and understood people first decades before it was an Army priority. He learned this as a young drill sergeant and carried this ethos with him to the 3rd Infantry Division, where he joins a prestigious group of 56 other Medal of Honor recipients. In the 3rd ID, Al was known as one of the most knowledgeable and caring soldiers in his battalion. His battalion commander at the time, now Lieutenant General Gary Brito, knew him as a voice of reason and honest feedback. His platoon leader, Leon Matthias, knew Al was an experienced soldier who did the right thing and always led by selfless example. This was never more evident than on October 17, 2005. With his lieutenant fresh off mid-tour leave, Sergeant First Class Cashe stepped in to lead a patrol because he was more familiar with the specifics of the vehicles and the patrol route on that particular day. Al was respected and loved because, as you heard General McConville recount, Sergeant First Class Cashe was literally willing to run through fire for the soldiers who served with him. Our second inductee, Sergeant First Class Christopher Celiz, also loved his teammates. Always someone that brought people together, Chris invited his teammates for hikes on the weekends and dinners at the Celiz home, making sure they always felt part of a family, not just a unit. He was able to shift from moments of intense pressure to levity, pulling out his guitar, playing Chris Stapleton songs, or cracking a few jokes. But then, just as quickly, he was able to bring his team back to the mindset they needed to handle the serious tasks that lay ahead. He was, quote, a guy you met once in a lifetime and a phenomenal human being, not just a Ranger. Our third inductee, Master Sergeant Earl Plumlee, is here today and is also well known for his love of his fellow Green Berets. Universally respected for his competence and leadership, Earl's good sense of humor makes him the person that friends and teammates always rely on for a laugh, especially when things get tough. To a man, the soldiers fighting with Earl at Fob Ghazni point to his loyalty to his team and his willingness to share any and all hardships with him. Some of them are watching today, and they credit him with turning the tide of battle that day because he never waits around. He's a man of action. Another common thread that binds each of these soldiers together through decades of service and multiple combat deployments is their shared love for their families. Al Cashe grew up in a household of 9 children, so it's no surprise that family was enormously important to him. Al met his wife Tamara at Fort Lewis in Washington, and after speaking with her this week, it's clear that those early days in the Army when they met were formative ones for both of them. Al and Tamara worked hard to build their life together. She left her job as a cook in the Army to care for their daughter Alexis and worked various jobs at Fort Benning so she and Al could buy a home in Columbus, Georgia. The central importance Sergeant First Class Cashe placed on family is also manifest in how his older sister, Cassinel, and the entire Cashe family are devoted to preserving his legacy. Sergeant First Class Celiz also shared this deep love of family, as countless teammates have pointed out, saying that, quote, he never stopped talking or thinking about his family. If you are lucky enough to have met his high school sweetheart, Katie, and his determined, creative daughter, Shannon, it's not hard to see why. The Celiz family shares a number of great traditions and has a history of supporting each other. Chris had a favorite do-it-yourself project, a van that he converted into an RV for the family to travel the country in. And I understand Katie and Shannon still use it for road trips today. Even with 7 combat deployments under their belts, the Celiz family found ways to stay connected to each other, to include sending Chris yellow banana shirts to wear on Hawaiian Fridays, the team's down days during deployment. To honor Sergeant First Class Celiz's legacy and the love he had for his family, his unit, the 75th Ranger Regiment, continues to support Katie and Shannon today, including helping Shannon with her current science project on parachutes. Shannon, I have no doubt that your dad would be so proud to know that you are passionately diving into every task and challenge that you face, whether it's playing piano or playing football. And just like Sergeants First Class Cashe and Celiz, Master Sergeant Earl Plumlee's affection for the Army is eclipsed only by his love for his family. Friends and teammates talk about Earl in glowing terms, highlighting many of his fantastic qualities, but they inevitably circle back for the most important thing in his life, his wife Terry, his daughter Lillian, and his son Lincoln, who has great boots, by the way. As I've seen firsthand in just the last 6 months, the strength of our Army is the strength of our soldiers, and the strength of our soldiers is the strength of our families. The Plumlees are an incredible Army family, one that has weathered many combat deployments, training rotations, and long years of service. Through it all, they've only grown stronger together. We are lucky and proud that they remain part of the Army family and continue to serve our country. Each of these incredible soldiers and their families that we honor today, while from different parts of the country, different walks of life, and different religious faiths, represent what is best about our Army. The common thread that binds them is the love of their teammates and their love for their families. As we induct them into the Hall of Heroes, let their examples challenge each of us to dig deep, find what is best in ourselves, and live lives worthy of their sacrifices. Please help me welcome Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin.
Well, good morning, everybody. It is indeed an honor to be with you today. Secretary Wormuth and General McConville, thank you for your moving words and for your steadfast leadership of our Army. Let me also recognize General Milley and General Hokanson and Sergeant Major Grenston. You know, the many leaders who are here tell you what a special day this is for the United States Army. And I know that we've already met the family members here today, but I don't believe we can ever thank them enough. So I want to pay tribute again, starting with the Cashe family, Samarra Cashe and daughter Alexis, and Sergeant Cashe's siblings, including Cassinel Cashe White. Let me also recognize Katie Celiz and daughter Shannon, as well as Sergeant Celiz's mother, Judy. And we're honored to have Terry Plumlee, and the Plumlee children, Lillian and Lincoln. And we also have Sergeant Plumlee's proud mother here, Missy Elliott. You know, military families serve every bit as much as our men and women in uniform. And while we talked a lot today about the courage and strength of the Medal of Honor recipients, I also want to salute the courage and the strength of the entire Cashe, Celiz, and Plumlee families. And let me also recognize the many service members here today who served right alongside our three recipients and the members of the Medal of Honor Society. Our heroes are testaments to the families and the communities who raised them, and to the allies and partners who fought alongside them, and to the Army that shaped them. So thank you all for being here today. You know, back in 1945, a couple of weeks after VE Day, President Truman awarded the Medal of Honor to Technical Sergeant Jake Lindsay, an infantry hero from World War II. And he described Sergeant Lindsay in words that could just as easily be said about the three recipients that we're honoring today. As the president put it, no officer ordered the sergeant to stand alone against the enemy. No one ordered him to keep fighting, even after he was wounded. Instead, President Truman said, quote, "Those decisions came from his own heart. They were a flash of nobility, which we like to think is a part of every American." And so 3/4 of a century have passed, and the face of war has changed. But in the hardest moments of their missions, on the hardest days of their lives, our men and women in uniform still make incredibly brave decisions from the heart. We're here today because of the valiant hearts of Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cashe, and Sergeant First Class Christopher Celiz, and Master Sergeant Earl Plumlee. And their names belong forever in our Hall of Heroes. Let me start with Sergeant Cashe. He was the baby of his family, the youngest of 9 kids. And their parents taught Sergeant Cashe and his siblings the value of hard work. His father would say, "Do it like you're putting your name on it. Do it like you're putting your name on it." That's something that Sergeant Cashe would later instill into his soldiers. When he was a drill sergeant at Fort Benning, the recruits remembered the pride that he took in everything that he did, even shining his boots. And Sergeant Cashe's boots shined like a mirror. Above all, he took great pride in taking care of his soldiers. In fact, Lieutenant General Gary Brito, who is here today, remembers him walking around the barracks after midnight checking on his team. On one night in October of 2005, he was in a Bradley fighting vehicle that rolled into an IED and burst into flames. Now, Sergeant Cashe managed to escape from the commander's hatch, but his soldiers were still inside of the burning vehicle. And in that moment, Sergeant Cashe made a choice, as President Truman would say, from his own heart. And he turned back and he pulled the driver to safety. But more of his men were still trapped. So Sergeant Cashe went back into the flaming Bradley and he removed 4 more soldiers. But yet 2 were still missing. And so he went back. And again, and again, and again, Sergeant Cashe pulled his men out of the flames. Now, many have noted that Sergeant Cashe is the first black American who fought in Afghanistan and Iraq to receive the Medal of Honor, making him an important part of the history of these 2 wars. But looking back on his career, I'm struck by all the times that he put himself last. In the barracks, being the last to get to sleep because he was checking on his men. And after the blast, demanding that he be the last soldier to be evacuated. And at the hospital, insisting that the doctors tend to him last. Again, and again, and again, Sergeant Cashe put others first. Do it like you're putting your name on it, his father would say. And Sergeant Cashe did, throughout his time in uniform and in his stunning final act of duty, valor, and love. 13 years later, in a different theater, Sergeant First Class Christopher Celiz was nearing the end of his 5th deployment with his Ranger Battalion. And in another split-second decision, he stepped directly into the line of fire to save his teammates. Now, from a young age, Sergeant Celiz felt compelled to serve his country. He joined JROTC in high school and spent weekends competing at drill meets. Sergeant Celiz was a proud Ranger, and we all know that Rangers lead the way. Sergeant Celiz loved teaching Rangers and mentoring them and bonding with them over dinners or on outings in the wilderness. In return, his fellow Rangers called him a national treasure, the hardest worker in the battalion, and a top-notch dude. And they remember him for always putting himself at the decisive point on the battlefield. And that's just what he did on that July day in 2018 in Afghanistan. When his Rangers came under Taliban attack, Sergeant Celiz dodged bullets so that he could get to a heavy weapon system. That gave his team time to find a safe place for evacuation. And when his weapons weren't enough to hold off the enemy, Sergeant Celiz used his own body as a shield to protect his team. And as the evacuation helicopter was lifting off, enemy fire found Sergeant Celiz, and he knew that he was wounded. But in one of his last acts, he waved for the aircraft to depart without him. Mrs. Celiz, we're honored to have you here with us. I'm told that when you got that terrible phone call about your husband more than 3 years ago, you said that you raced through a range of emotions, but surprise was not one of them. Because Sergeant Celiz always led the way, especially when it meant leading his team out of harm's way. And today, we salute that the extraordinary courage of this extraordinary Ranger. Now, we're honored to have our 3rd Medal of Honor recipient here with us, Master Sergeant Plumlee. In 2013, at Forward Operating Base Ghazni in Afghanistan, Sergeant Plumlee had just taken a photo with his team when the ground beneath them shook. And in the flash of that massive blast, Sergeant Plumlee jumped into action. The base's walls were breached, but he was determined to protect it. So he just kept moving. Over and over, he advanced on the insurgents, firing whatever weapon that he could get his hands on. A rifle, a pistol, a grenade. And over, he put his life on the line, taking any cover that he could find. First, an electrical box, and then a plastic water tank. And over, he came face to face with the enemy, just some 7 meters away. Now, Sergeant Plumlee is a humble guy. He's never wanted to be singled out for his heroism, and he's quick to remind people that it's not about him, it's about the team. And that's why, out of everything that happened that day, out of all those individual acts of bravery and skill, Sergeant Plumlee has said that what he's most proud of is linking back up with his team during the battle. And from there, they got organized and pulled off what he later called as, quote, an aggressive and synced up stack moving into the chaos. Sergeant Plumlee, I know that you have never set out to add your name to the Hall of Heroes. But take it from your buddies who are here today. Take it from your commanders who have told your story. And take it from me. Over and over, you have more than earned your place here. Now, there's a common thread among the stories of these men and so many other Medal of Honor recipients. In their acts of bravery and heroism, there was no time. No time to blink, no time to breathe, and certainly no time to think about being brave. And yet they were brave. Brave beyond all expectation, because they felt something deeper. In those moments, in those flashes of nobility, they knew that they were part of a team, and they acted out of a profound sense of loyalty and love. And they felt it more than the fear, more than the pain, and more than a desire for their own safety. You know, their medal citations tell their stories. But those citations can't possibly capture the chaos, the thunder, the confusion, and the courage that rose above it all. You know, ladies and gentlemen, we have the strongest military that the world has ever known. But it's not because of our advanced weapons. It's not because of our helicopters or our tanks. It's because of the ideals that we fight for. And it's because we have the best team in the world. And Sergeant First Class Cashe, Sergeant First Class Celiz, and Master Sergeant Plumlee are the best of the best. With decisions and with bravery that came from the heart. And God bless our Medal of Honor recipients and their families and all who love them. Thank you very much.
Secretary Wormuth, General Milley, General McConville, Sergeant Major of the Army Grinston, Mrs. Tamara Cashe, and Mrs. Cassinell Cashe White will now join Secretary Austin on stage for the induction ceremony of Sergeant First Class Alwyn C. Cashe. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated during the presentations. The President of the United States of America authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has posthumously awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Sergeant First Class Alwyn C. Cashe, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life, above and beyond the call of duty. Sergeant First Class Alwyn C. Cashe distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty, while serving as a platoon sergeant with Company A, 1st Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division, in Salah ad-Din Province, Iraq, on October 17, 2005. While on a nighttime mounted patrol near an enemy-laden village, the Bradley fighting vehicle, which Sergeant First Class Cashe was commanding, was attacked by small enemy arms fire and an improvised explosive device which disabled the vehicle and engulfed it in flames. After extracting himself from the vehicle, Sergeant First Class Cashe set about extracting the driver who was trapped in the vehicle. After opening the driver's hatch, Sergeant First Class Cashe and a fellow soldier extracted the driver, who was engulfed in flames, extinguished the flames, and moved him to a position of relative safety. During the course of extinguishing the flames on the driver and extracting him from the vehicle, Sergeant First Class Cashe's fuel-soaked uniform ignited, causing severe burns to his body. Ignoring his painful wounds, Sergeant First Class Cashe then moved to the rear of the vehicle to continue in aiding his fellow soldiers who were trapped in the troop compartment. At this time, the enemy noted his movements and began to direct their fire on his position. When another element of the company engaged the enemy, Sergeant First Class Cashe seized the opportunity and moved into the open troop door and aided 4 of his soldiers in escaping the burning vehicle. Having extracted the 4 soldiers, Sergeant First Class Cashe noticed 2 other soldiers who had not been accounted for, and he again entered the burning vehicle to retrieve them. At this time, reinforcements arrived to further suppress the enemy and establish a casualty collection point. Despite the severe 2nd and 3rd degree burns covering the majority of his body, Sergeant First Class Cashe persevered through the pain to encourage his fellow soldiers and ensured that they received needed medical care. When medical evacuation helicopters began to arrive, Sergeant First Class Cashe selflessly refused evacuation until all of the other wounded soldiers were evacuated first. Sergeant First Class Cashe's extraordinary heroism and selflessness above and beyond the call of duty were in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. At this time, the Medal of Honor flag will be presented. On 23 October 2002, Public Law 107-248, Section 8143, established the Medal of Honor flag to recognize service members who have distinguished themselves by gallantry in action above and beyond the call of duty. The Medal of Honor flag commemorates the sacrifice and bloodshed for our freedoms and gives emphasis to the Medal of Honor being the highest award for valor by an individual serving in the armed forces of the United States. The light blue color with gold fringe bearing the 13 white stars are adapted from the Medal of Honor ribbon. Thank you, Mrs. Cashe and Mrs. Cashe White. Mrs. Cashe and Celiz, please join Secretary Austin, Secretary Wormuth, General Milley, General McConville, and Sergeant Major of the Army Grinston for the induction ceremony of Sergeant First Class Christopher A. Celiz. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated during the presentations. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has posthumously awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Sergeant First Class Christopher A. Celiz, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Sergeant First Class Christopher A. Celiz distinguished himself by conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty while engaged with the enemy in Paktia Province, Afghanistan on July 12, 2018. As the leader of a special purpose unit comprised of partnered forces and members of the 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, Sergeant First Class Celiz led an operation to clear an enemy area of enemy forces and thereby disrupt future attacks against the government of Afghanistan and allied forces. Shortly after his team reached their initial objectives, a large enemy force attacked, placing effective fire on him and his team, preventing them from maneuvering to counterattack. Realizing the danger the attack posed to his team and the operation, Sergeant First Class Celiz voluntarily exposed himself to intense enemy machine gun and small arms fire to retrieve and employ a heavy weapon system, thereby allowing U.S. and partnered forces to regain the initiative, maneuver to a secure location, and begin treatment of a critically wounded partnered force member. As the medical evacuation helicopter arrived, it was immediately engaged by accurate and sustained enemy fire. Knowing how critically it was to quickly load the casualty, Sergeant First Class Celiz willingly exposed himself to heavy enemy fire to direct and lead the evacuation. As the casualty moved from a position of cover and out into intense enemy fire, Sergeant First Class Celiz made a conscious effort to ensure his body acted as a physical shield to his team, carrying the casualty and the crew of the aircraft. As the casualty was loaded and Sergeant First Class Celiz's team returned to cover, he alone remained at the aircraft, returning a high volume of fire and constantly repositioning himself to act as a physical shield to the aircraft and its crew. With his final reposition, Sergeant First Class Celiz placed himself directly between the cockpit and the enemy, ensuring the aircraft was able to depart. As the helicopter lifted off, Sergeant First Class Celiz was hit by enemy fire. Fully aware of his own injury, but understanding the peril to the aircraft from the intense enemy machine gun fire, Sergeant First Class Celiz motioned to the aircraft to depart rather than remain to load him. His selfless actions saved the life of the evacuated partnered force member and almost certainly prevented further casualties among the other members of his team and the aircrew. Throughout the entire engagement, Sergeant First Class Celiz significantly changed the course of the battle by repeatedly placing himself in extreme danger to protect his team and defeat the enemy, ultimately costing him his life. Sergeant First Class Celiz's extraordinary heroism and selflessness above and beyond the call of duty were in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. At this time, the Medal of Honor flag will be presented. On 23 October 2002, Public Law 107-248, Section 8143, established the Medal of Honor flag to recognize service members who have distinguished themselves by gallantry in action above and beyond the call of duty. The Medal of Honor flag commemorates the sacrifice and bloodshed for our freedoms, and gives emphasis to the Medal of Honor being the highest award for valor by an individual serving in the armed forces of the United States. The light blue color with gold fringe bearing 13 white stars are adapted from the Medal of Honor ribbon. Thank you, Mrs. Celiz. Master Sergeant Plumlee, please join Secretary Austin, Secretary Wormuth, General Milley, General McConville, and Sergeant Major of the Army Grinston. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated during the presentations. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Master Sergeant Earl D. Plumlee, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Staff Sergeant Earl D. Plumlee distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty on August 28, 2013, while serving as a weapons sergeant, C Company, 4th Battalion, 1st Special Forces Group, Airborne, in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Sergeant Plumlee instantly responded to an enemy attack on Forward Operating Base Ghazni, Ghazni Province, Afghanistan, that began with an explosion that tore a 60-foot breach in the base's perimeter wall. 10 insurgents wearing Afghan National Army uniforms and suicide vests poured through the breach. Sergeant Plumlee and 5 others mounted 2 vehicles and raced toward the explosion. When his vehicle was engaged by enemy fire, Sergeant Plumlee reacted instinctively, using his body as a shield to shield the driver prior to exiting the vehicle, engaging the enemy insurgent 15 meters to the vehicle's right with his pistol. Without cover and with a complete disregard for his own safety, he advanced on the enemy, engaging multiple insurgents with only his pistol. Upon reaching cover, he killed 2 insurgents, one with a grenade and the other by detonating the insurgent's suicide vest using precision sniper fire. Again, disregarding his own safety, Sergeant Plumlee advanced alone against the enemy, engaging several insurgents at close range, including one whose suicide vest exploded a mere 7 meters from his position. Under intense enemy fire, Sergeant Plumlee temporarily withdrew to cover, where he joined up with another soldier, and together they mounted another counterattack. Under fierce enemy fire, Sergeant Plumlee again moved from cover and attacked the enemy forces, advancing within 7 meters of a previously wounded insurgent who detonated his suicide vest, blowing Sergeant Plumlee against a nearby wall. Sergeant Plumlee ignored his injuries, quickly regained his faculties, and re-engaged the enemy forces. Intense enemy fire once again forced the 2 soldiers to temporarily withdraw. Undeterred, Sergeant Plumlee joined a small group of American and Polish soldiers who moved from cover to once again counterattack the infiltrators. As the force advanced, Sergeant Plumlee engaged an insurgent to his front left. He then swung around and engaged another insurgent who charged the group from the rear. The insurgent detonated his suicide vest, mortally wounding a U.S. soldier. Sergeant Plumlee, with complete disregard for his own safety, ran to the wounded soldier, carried him to safety, and rendered first aid. He then methodically cleared the area, remained in a secure posture, and continued to scan for any remaining threats. Staff Sergeant Earl D. Plumlee's extraordinary heroism and devotion to duty are in keeping with the finest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, the Special Forces Regiment, and the United States Army. At this time, the Medal of Honor flag will be presented. On 23 October 2002, Public Law 107-248, Section 8143, established the Medal of Honor flag to recognize service members who have distinguished themselves by gallantry in action above and beyond the call of duty. The Medal of Honor flag commemorates the sacrifice and bloodshed for our freedoms, and gives emphasis to the Medal of Honor being the highest award for valor by an individual serving in the armed forces of the United States. The light blue color with gold fringe, bearing 13 white stars, are adapted from the Medal of Honor ribbon. Mrs. Cashe, Mrs. Cashe White, and Mrs. Celiz, please join the official party on the stage. The Medal of Honor plaque will now be unveiled, inducting Sergeant First Class Cashe, Sergeant First Class Celiz, and Master Sergeant Plumlee into the Hall of Heroes. Thank you, Secretary Austin, Secretary Wormuth, General Milley, General McConville, Sergeant Major Grinston, Master Sergeant Plumlee, Mrs. Cashe, and Mrs. Celiz. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Cashe White.
Good morning, everyone. To our honored guests, I cannot call you by names because all your acronyms I do not have remembered at this time. But I would like to say thank you to the third ID, who I see here in number, who have always stood and represented. You called him Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cashe. I just call him Al, my baby brother. You've represented him well. I come this morning to tell you a story. It's about a little boy that was born on July 13, 1970, that had a supporting cast of 8. That would be all of his brothers and sisters. He was the last born to Ruby Mae and Andrew Cashe. He was a very rambunctious, rebellious, adventuresome child. I think we all labeled him a daredevil. I don't have to tell you his Army side, because you have heard the story, you have read the reports, you have lived with him. You know all of that. I want you to know him as the scrawny kid from Oviedo, Florida, the baby brother to Mayetta, Bernadine, Cassino, Carlos, Yuli, Yvonne, Andrea, and Cedric. He was our baby brother. He had a normal childhood, as most could say, but he had a different type of childhood, as I am his middle sister and I am his sister by 12 years. He has a sister that is 2 generations older than he. He had many nephews and nieces that were older than he, and he used to shy away from the title of uncle. They would be 17 and ask him for $1, and he was only 6. He entered the Army immediately after high school. I don't think he was out 30 days before he went into the U.S. Army. As all of you know, by now he found his niche when he went into the Army. He chose to be an infantryman. I say that with pride. He chose to be an infantryman. In that, he found that he could express himself, whether it was jumping out of a perfectly good plane or coming down a 20 to 30-foot wall head first. He loved the outdoors. One of his greatest accomplishments was when he became a master gunner. That boy could tear a gun apart, any type, whether it be a pistol, a rifle, or anything apart so fast and put it back together. He would come home to visit, and he really enjoyed hunting with his brother-in-law, Robert. They would come out of the fields after a couple of days. Don't ask me what they did. They would just come out of the fields, usually with a buck through on the back of the truck or something of that nature. Fishing, outdoorsy stuff, that was his mantra. He was hard on his family too. Usually the guys from the 3rd ID told me that they had a love-hate-love relationship. I can believe that because Al was only 5 years older than my oldest child, and he would dress her down like she was in the military. She was a general manager of a store, and he actually went to her store and told her how to run her own store in front of her crew. But she loved him. He was a big brother and uncle to my nephew, Robert Andrew. He'll kill me for that later. We called him Drew. I think he visited Al mostly out of all his posts, at all his posts, and more than his brothers and sisters. Now to tell you about the Armyman. When he did what he did on the 17th of October, today the children would say he did not understand the assignment because I told him in June of that year, go on deployment, have fun, duck, and come home. He obviously did not understand me. When I first heard about his injuries, I was like, okay, that's Al. Throw a Band-Aid on it, put a cast around his foot, send him home for a couple of days. Okay, I went to work because they said Al was hurt. We all felt like Al always came home. This was not his first deployment. He had been to Afghanistan, peaceful countries also, Germany, Italy. He had asked us to visit, but I always told him, okay, I will next time. I didn't get that next time. So for those of you sitting out there in uniform, always encourage your family to visit. Make sure they do. Make those memories. That's my only regret. Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cashe had a quick smile and a dry humor. And I think that's a family trait because I look at my brothers and sisters and even my nieces and nephews sometimes and I say that's a strong gene because that's what we do. But we all know that we loved Al from the oldest to now the youngest, Andrea, his wife, Samarra, his daughter, Alexis. I think sometimes, though, I miss him most because I took it for granted. And sometimes the guilt of that taken for granted is almost too much to bear. But I want you to know the man, not just a soldier. He had I call it a crooked smile. When he graduated from Oviedo High School, which all of us did, his yearbook picture shows the smile and the rebellion in his eye. When he decided to join the Army, it was news to me, but I was happy because you could tell when he came home, it meant everything to him. I want to leave you with a poem that our brother Euler Curtis Cashe wrote, and I think it sums up what my family feels. He wrote this poem in 2005. We did not put it on Al's legacy.com obituary site until 2008 because it was really painful for all of us. But the poem reads, "Last born, first to die. They called you a hero, so I hold my head high. Last born, first to die. I think of you often, tears fill my eye. Last born, first to die. I miss you, dear brother, and that is no lie. Last born, first to die. I keep you in memory as time goes by. Last born, first to die. I pray to the Almighty, the question is why. The last born is the first to die. If it's God's will, why should I pry? Last born, first to die. Never achieving perfection, but continue to try. Last born, first to die. Rest in peace, much love, but now I say goodbye. You will always be my hero. In my eyes, you are loved, admired, and respected. So we love him, we do respect him, we miss him, but this honor of achieving the Medal of Honor, even though it took a while, but as I said, we never lost the strength of the 3rd ID. They stood behind us. Then Lieutenant Colonel Gary Brito submitted more packages than I've submitted ever. He submitted packages just to get this done. He'd be like, "Cass, hold on, we gonna get it, we gonna get it." And for a while there, it looked like we wouldn't, but we did. So I thank all of you that have helped in the journey, in the struggle. When you think of my brother, don't think of him as the first African American to be awarded the Medal of Honor. Think of him as a soldier who loved his boys, who died showing how much he loved his boys. He was a soldier first that loved each and every one of you from the 3rd ID and his family in his own way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cash White. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Katie Celiz.
When I was first asked if I would be comfortable giving a speech about my late husband, Sergeant First Class Christopher Andrew Celiz, I was initially at a loss for words. How does one describe a person like Chris, someone who is considered to be a hero by so many? After some deep reflection, I had 3 words that came to mind: father, friend, and father. When I tried to break these down into smaller details to help portray the real Chris, I found these words were all interconnected by one concept, one idea, one creed that truly described Chris. Rangers lead the way. Chris strongly believed that leadership was not simply giving orders. Leadership was leading by example and never asking someone something you were not willing to do yourself. While Chris rarely discussed his job with me, he often spoke of his men. He would tell me about their families, their goals, and how he hoped to guide them in a positive direction to better themselves. In a way, Chris thought of his soldiers as his own children, and he sincerely wanted to see them not only succeed in the Army, but to succeed in life. He pushed them, he encouraged them, he listened to them, and he always did his personal best to lead by example. When Chris was at work, he was 100% focused on his men and his mission. With that said, when Chris was home, he was 100% focused on being a father, a friend, and spending time with family. The phrase, lead by example, carried over to our family life. Chris actively showed our daughter Shannon every day was an opportunity to do good, to better yourself, and to find joy in life. He believed in paying kindness forward and volunteering your time or money whenever possible without ever expecting anything in return. He would do this by participating with places like Habitat for Humanity and congregations and services. Chris encouraged our family to go out of our comfort zones and broaden horizons by setting new goals or starting a new hobby. Once again, he led by example, by learning multiple languages, teaching himself new skills like carpentry and welding. And my personal favorite, Pancake Sundays, where Chris would find new creative ways to make pancakes for our daughter, Shannon. Chris found joy in painting, playing the guitar, and exploring nature. He would lead our family on multiple camping trips along the Appalachian Trail. He taught us how to make pine needle tea, how to catch and cook frogs, make dandelion salads, and the most important, leaving Mother Nature the way you found her. Chris also led our family religiously. He was proud of our Jewish faith and found it extremely important that our daughter attend a Jewish day school. He would help her with her Hebrew and Parsha studies. He would read to Shannon PJ Library books and take us to Saturday Shabbat services. Chris and I felt extremely blessed to have so many wonderful people in our lives. Chris often teased that we did not have friends, just a very large family. Even though the actions of July 12, 2018 took Chris away from me forever, I still feel blessed. Our family, both blood and chosen, have stood by my side in love and support. I want to take this moment to thank all of our military family, especially the Rangers. I know Chris would be grateful how you have taken our daughter, Shannon, under your wing. You've attended her school plays, had us over for family dinners, and even gone out of your way to help her with her science fair project. Your acts of kindness would only solidify Chris's feelings about you being part of our family. I also believe that Chris would be proud of you, of how you continue to dedicate your lives to serve and protect our great nation. Rangers, lead the way.
Thank you, Mrs. Celiz. Ladies and gentlemen, Master Sergeant Earl Plumlee.
I'd like to start by thanking the Celiz and Cashe families. The only thing I can think of to add more weight to the honor here is to share this stage with your families. Thank you. I'd also like to apologize to my wife and my mother. I'm sorry. I'll be more careful in the future. Probably a lie. Mr. Secretary, Madam Secretary, General Milley, General McConville, it's an honor, and it's a pleasure. Looking forward to continue to serve and carry out the will of the U.S. government and make the Army proud. To my brothers still in uniform, and to my country who've honored me today, I look forward to honoring you with my continued service. And, sir, I'll see you at work on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Master Sergeant Plumlee. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand or remain standing and join in the singing of the Army Song. The words to the Army Song can be found in your program.
March along, sing a song, we're the army of the free. Count the brave, count the true, who have fought to victory. We're the army and proud of our name. We're the army and proudly proclaim. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. Then it's hi, hi, hey, the army's on its way. Count off the cadence loud and strong. For where'er we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along.
This concludes the Medal of Honor induction ceremony. Thank you for attending. Ladies and gentlemen, please join in congratulating Master Sergeant Plumlee, Mrs. Cashe, and Mrs. Celiz in the receiving line at the front of the stage. Thank you.